Hello my friends, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge, where a lot of you join me every day to get your daily dose of satisfaction, because we all love to hear stories of people getting what they deserve. In this episode, there's gonna be 3 stories. The first is how a trucker gets revenge on a driver during a traffic jam. The second story deals with loss prevention, and the last story is a super entertaining one about how a grandpa gets revenge on a thief. I hope you stay for the stories today and subscribe for future videos. Let's get into it. This first story is titled The Ultimate Trucker Revenge Story. I heard this one from a friend of mine who's a trucker. Although I can't prove that it's true, the guy's an honest friend of mine and hasn't made up anything during the time I've known him. Anyway, I figured I'd post it here. He was sitting in a long traffic jam on I-24 between Nashville and Chattanooga, Tennessee, after drinking a lot of caffeine, water, and soda. Since the traffic was at a dead stop and he had to pee, he took a Ziploc baggie from the back of his sleeper cab and emptied his entire bladder into it. He zipped it back up and got into the driver's seat. Fast forward about 20 minutes. He still hasn't made any progress, but his CB radio started going crazy. Anybody who has a driver's license has probably witnessed the self-entitled pricks who drive on the shoulder of the interstate in order to get in front of traffic. By doing this, they are frequently blocking the only emergency access to the wreck ahead of us. These people piss me off, as well as every trucker sitting in traffic. So he was hearing reports of 2 Mustangs, riding with the tops down with a bunch of frat douches coming up the shoulder at about 50 miles per hour. And he had a brilliant idea. Remember that Ziploc bag of piss? Well, he got into the passenger seat of his truck, rolled down the window, and waited until the Mustangs were in clear view. As they reached his truck, he threw the bag out of the window. It slammed into the windshield of the first Mustang, spraying everywhere. They then proceeded to take the next exit, hopefully to clean off all of the pee that just coated them. So he got a round of cheers on the CB radio that day. Well deserved, my friend. This story's kind of disgusting, but if you're in a traffic jam caused by an accident and you decide to take the shoulder to get ahead of everyone, blocking the path of an emergency vehicle trying to get to people who may need help, you kind of deserve it. This story's titled, Cutting Hours for Loss Prevention Personnel is Generally a Bad Idea. I used to work in loss prevention for a regional chain of electronics store. Let's call it Shit Store. My job was basically to patrol the store in plain clothes and detain someone if I caught them steal. I've worked in private security before, so this was a pretty nice gig. The store's corporate policy, for reasons I can't quite comprehend, mandated a weekly quota of shoplifter apprehensions, which we called stops, and we needed to have at least 3 stops a week. Usually we had about 10, just shy of 2 per day, and obviously, most of the stops involved expensive electronics. We paid our own salaries many times over and saved the company an astronomical amount of money. Until one week, Saturday rolled around and all loss prevention personnel were called into the office. There were 4 of us. The store manager told us that only 2 stops had been made for the week, so we had not met our quota. He contacted corporates and they told him to give all loss prevention personnel the entire week off to save on cost. An extra cashier would be scheduled to stand by the door as a deterrent. As you can imagine, a week of no pay did not exactly go over well with us. It was particularly bad timing for me. My rent was due, my dog had some vet bills, and my nephew's birthday was coming up. I and all of my coworkers did everything to fight this. We talked about how we usually met our quota many times over, how we paid our own salaries with all the stops we did, how much money we'd save the company, but it all fell on deaf ears. By the end of it, the manager was clearly flustered, but insisted that we just stay home the next week, and he said, think of it like a vacation. We all had plenty of time off available, but of course, he said that we couldn't use it, because it's all about cutting losses for the company, he said. Cutting losses? Oh dear. If only he knew the shit I was about to pull. We went home feeling pissed and wronged, but before I even set my foot in the door, I had the vague beginnings of a plan for vengeance. Now, I had a few friends, or I guess acquaintances, who were a bit shady. They were generally straight-laced, but they themselves had friends who were even shadier. Dealers, addicts, and even a few gang members if the rumors were true. They usually hang out in the parks around the city, so I began to make my rounds. The conversation with each group followed a pretty set pattern. I would say hi, but look a little pissed, and they would ask how I was doing. And I'd say something like, not too good I guess. Shitstore just gave the entire loss prevention team a week off to save money. I'm gonna miss an entire paycheck. A few would probe a bit, and I would verify that yes, anyone could walk into the store and take shit without having to worry about an undercover LP watching them. Word gets around fast. All I had to do now was head to the store, grab a 30-pack of beer, and slowly drink the week away while shit went down. People lost their minds. So much product went missing every day, and not just the little things. People were apparently walking out with giant flat-screen TVs and refusing to stop for the lowly cashier by the door. Tablets, laptops, netbooks, and consoles all vanished into thin air. Several cell phones from the display case even went missing. I would not hear about this till later though. All I know is that on Wednesday, hardly halfway through my unpaid week off, I got a call from work. I let it go to voicemail and couldn't help but crack a smile when I listened to it. It was the store manager asking me to come in and work a full shift because the problems they'd been having. You could almost hear the desperation in his voice. I knew my little scheme had worked, but sadly, I chose not to respond or come into work that day. Even if I wanted to, I was pretty deep into a six-pack at the time. I got another call the following day, which this time I answered, and I said, "Gee, boss, I'm so sorry, but I'm actually 8 hours away at the beach right now. I thought going out of town would be a good idea since you said to treat this like a vacation." The following day, I didn't get a phone call. Shitstore had just bussed LP personnel from the other stores and had a police officer stand by the door. I'm sure the police department was happy to oblige, and I can only imagine how many calls they got from Shitstore over the past week. When I went back to work after my week was up, there were 2 new policies that were tacked right onto the bulletin board. At least one LP associate must be on the floor from open to close, and the quota was changed from the number of stops per week to the amount of money saved in a month. A much more flexible quota that the 4 of us would have no problem meeting. I never did learn the hard numbers on how much money was lost out of the store, but I do know it was in the 6-figure range. I ran into my shadier acquaintances showing off their new iPads a few days after the mess. I think I know how they got them. I don't work retail, so I don't know, but for all of you who work in electronics stores like Best Buy, Walmart, GameStop, etc., please let me know if theft is this common. I was starting to think that this maybe happened in the early 2000s or 1990s, but then OP said a few acquaintances stole iPads. I find it a little unbelievable that people can get away with laptops, iPads, etc. when a lot of the times they're locked up in a glass case. Someone please tell me. This last story is titled, Grandpa's Revenge. My grandpa was an amazing man. I gladly attribute my writing style to him. He was simply an incredible storyteller. I've been imitating his humor since I was old enough to say so. He had some great revenge stories too, especially from the Army Reserve. Now buckle up, because I'm gonna wax nostalgic. Grandpa worked for a company that set up displays in grocery stores. Due to his generous and talkative nature, he had a lot of contacts and connections, which meant that he was offered all sorts of food that was nearing its expiration date. Even better, once a display was done, it was often to be disposed of, which meant it was taken away to his basement. Grandpa's basement was like a grocery store that did your laundry while you shopped. It was awesome. He even had a refrigerated section. The dairy products needed to be eaten right away, so they didn't go bad, but the potato chips, cans of soda, fruit drinks, cereal, canned food, and other non-perishable stuff lined the shelves and filled the fridge. While the grown-ups would take a few cans of green beans or a bulk bag of frozen pizzas, the grandkids knew where all the good stuff was. An inflatable 3-foot-long Oscar Mayer hot dog in a bun, an inflatable package of sliced cheese, a world globe made of fake candy, and all the ice shovels we can ever want. When he was selling store on new products, we got the extra samples like Nintendo cereal and all sorts of amazing things. His twice-yearly garage sales were the stuff of legend. But what about the revenge, you ask? While most of the stuff was stored in the basement, some of it was boxed up in the shed. Long-term food and trinkets that could stand the summer heat. Grandpa's shed was one of those simple corrugated metal things. The doors didn't even lock. It housed his lawnmower, some grass seed, and a few boxes of goods for his garage sales. One day, he saw that a box was open, and some of the trinkets inside were gone. Over the next few weeks, he saw other things go missing. Not big stuff, just toys and trinkets, which is why he suspected a neighbor kid was breaking into his shed. There weren't many kids on his block though, and he never actually saw them breaking in, but an adult would have taken more, or not come back at all. His shed was in a fenced backyard too, so it wasn't like someone was wandering past. Finally, after losing quite a few trinkets and finding a box knocked over on the floor, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He had a day off in the middle of the week, and that evening, he built a trap that would have made Rube Goldberg jump for joy. It involved balloons, falling marbles, roller skates, the works. He spent a week planning it, and there were drawings. Once he finally built it, he went to bed, content that he would finally catch the thief. Early the next morning, he got up, made coffee, and waited for the burglar. As always happens, he was taking a break from watching when he heard a part of his trap spring. I think it was the balloon that popped when the door was moved. He ran for the back door, pelted down the back step, and ran around the side of the house just in time to see a flash of movement. Only a glimpse, but enough that he saw exactly where the burglar was, hiding behind a tree. He crept up to the tree, moving stealthily along its driveway. Now, this tree was special for whatever reason. It was split a little less than 4 feet off the ground, and the crotch of the tree was making a wide U shape. It was perfect for climbing. Grandpa, having reached the tree, realized that he could look down on the thief from above. The thief peeked around the tree, saw Grandpa there, and leapt up, and at the same instant, Grandpa popped his head over the tree screaming bloody murder, hoping to scare the ever-living daylights out of the little sneak thief. For a moment, the thief stared in absolute shock and terror, and then keeled over, flat on his back. The excitement of the chase and the sudden shock of seeing my grandpa's contorted face screaming down on him was too much. His heart must have given out. My grandpa actually scared him to death. For a moment, my grandpa just stared, and then, unbelieving, went around the tree and gave the corpse a gentle nudge. The thief was as dead as a doornail. Grandpa leaned against the tree, put his hands over his face, and laughed until he could barely breathe. I can still picture the tears of laughter in his eyes as he told me the story of how he gave a squirrel a heart attack. He never got his trinkets back, but boy did he get his revenge. Your grandpa is a fabulous storyteller, OP. When I read this story for the first time, I actually thought he scared a child to death. Now I do have one question. Can you actually scare a squirrel to death? Or was that exaggeration? And that's it for today's episode of r/ProRevenge. If you guys enjoyed the stories today, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and make sure you turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos.